Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for another nerd social commentary sort of video. Remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. Today, I want to talk about entitlement in the nerd community, this obsession with evil characters. I talked about this recently. And I was thinking about this recently because I was listening to this podcast recently, and the topic was something along the lines of how, activists should not become writers, right? And they also said just because you're a nerd doesn't mean you can write a comic book. It doesn't mean that you should be a writer. You know what I mean? And the guys were talking about, like, how many times do you hear someone, a fellow, let's say nerd, right? They come up to you like, hey man, what about this idea? And you're like, fuck. Just because you're a nerd doesn't mean you have a good idea. But there's this almost entitlement to thinking, oh, because I'm a fan of this product, I must know what I'm talking about, right? And I want to relate this to video games and even like that Street Fighter, what I said the story of Street Fighter should have been, right? You know what I mean? Because I've always said that, evil Ryu as a character, he doesn't make sense, right? And there's this like fascination with evil characters, right? And it's gotten even worse, because the world is so quotation marks woke now, and you got all these crazy fucking activists now, crying that, And again, I say this, and I've talked about this at nauseum because it's amazing that some people don't get it, right? And some people thought that I hated Bridget because of whatever. I just talked about Bridget because it was a fucking retcon, right? But I talk about, just like I talk about Ryu. Ryu has nothing to do with being transgender or not. I just don't like fucking retcons and changing ideas and making people and things heroes that aren't heroes, right? Because, again, if we were to look at a character like Evil Ryu, right? Evil Ryu actually is kind of a woke character almost. You know what I mean? He's almost kind of like a social justice warrior character, right? And of course, this was before, social justice warrior stuff. But when I talk about what does Evil Ryu represent, right? Evil Ryu almost kind of represents that nerd that thinks that just because they've devoted their life to something, that they know what they're talking about, right? I mean, and this is why I wanted to make this video, because again, think about it. How many times now have I said that most people are not good at video games? And most people can't talk about video games. Most people are not that smart, right? Just because you are a nerd does not mean that you should be good at a video game. Just because you are a nerd does not mean that you even know what the fuck you're talking about video game wise, right? But Ryu is almost kind of this embodiment, if you think about it, of this entitled, social justice, overly radical fucking, victim complex fucking nerd, right? Because if you think about it, again, we think about the original story of Ryu. The original story of Ryu actually is a hero, right? He is someone who devoted himself to an endeavor and he succeeded. He is the strongest in the world, but he had sacrificed his entire life. The dude doesn't even have shoes. You know what I mean? He everything, right? But he's the strongest dude ever, right? But what does Evil Ryu represent, right? Evil Ryu is kind of like that, entitled nerd that is like, hey, I have this hobby that I devote my life to, right? Let's think of that as Ryu. Ryu has this endeavor, this hobby. He loves fucking fighting. He's devoted his life to it, but he's never actually done anything in it, right? He kind of is like that nerd if you think about it, right? Because Evil Ryu in the story, he doesn't do anything. Ryu is not a hero in Street Fighter anymore. He's that nerd that has devoted, again, his life to everything, but he doesn't know what the fuck he's actually doing. His only value is that he gets grumpy and he gets angry, right? But he has friends that back him up, like, good job, giving him a pat on the back like he's a fucking child, right? Isn't that kind of interesting if you think about it? Again, he has no heroic qualities whatsoever. He's devoted his life to something and he's not that good at it, right? It's sad, right? And, but he's evil, right? And, there's this fascination, even not just in nerddom, but just life in general. I've talked about before in like the psychological, whatever kind of vlogs that I do sometimes, right? there's almost this like fascination of somebody that is evil, right? Just with maybe humans in general. Like people are like, oh, he's evil. Well, I can empathize with being evil because maybe we've, all quotation marks, let's say to an extent, have had, bad feelings or feelings of resentment or anger towards someone or something, or jealousy, whatever kind of negative quality you want to talk about, right? And so maybe someone does something bad and you're like, oh, well, I know what it feels like to feel bad, so I'm going to empathize with this character because he's angry, right? Whereas a lot of times when you maybe see someone that is like so good, like legitimately good, right? That it makes you like, that person is so good that makes them seem suspicious, right? And I've even said before, I've been a victim of that, so to speak, right? That, a lot of times because there's no ulterior motive, that people have thought I have an ulterior motive. Like when, again, we talk about doing that fucking homeless shit that I talked about that I was doing. All this other kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I've always tried to be the best person I can be. Like I said, it's crazy to think that, like I said, when I was dying, and I'm still fucking sick, but right, like I never even, that idea that most people, or that stereotypical thing like, oh, hey, doctor's giving you your will, better go call and apologize for everything. I never even had that moment because it's like, oh, fuck, I don't think I ever did anything bad to even apologize for. Fuck, right? You know what I mean? But, look at the internet and all the haters I have, so to speak, right? Oh, Clayton, yeah, we've never found anything about Clayton, but he must be evil, so we just got to make it up, right? Whereas you got other people that legitimately do bad things like, hey, I feel for you because maybe I have been evil too or something. So there's got to be some kind of good quality. Anyway, Evil Ryu, again, he's not heroic. He's generic, right? You know what I mean? And he hasn't succeeded. And that's kind of like, it's a sad thing to think that, a lot of times, maybe there is something that we like in life and we devote ourselves to it, but we don't end up being as good as we want to be, right? That's a bitter pill to swallow, that we are not always as good as we want to be at something, even though we have invested time in it, right? And Evil Ryu, although of course he's before, how overly radical LGBTQ social justice warrior the fucking world is now, the past 5 years, whatever it's been, right? He's before that, but he does kind of, if you think about it, he represents that sort of idea too. The fucking nerd that has devoted their life to something but never actually done anything and they just get angry. You know what I mean? He's not a hero. Whereas the original Ryu, maybe you could say the original Ryu is maybe boring. Maybe you could say the original Ryu is generic, right? I would call the new Ryu generic myself, but you know what? I would say the old Ryu is stoic. He is the ideal, the guy that has no ulterior motive, and the guy that has devoted their self to something and succeeded. And that is a rarity. That is an ideal that you strive towards, right? And again, and I'll say it again, what the story they should have done in Street Fighter. Like I said, Evil Ryu makes no sense because Akuma is, the antithesis, you know what I mean? The other side, the yin to the yang, whatever you want to call it. He is the idea of the guy that went to the dark side, let's say, quotation marks, right? He used his form of, karate, whatever, to use the killing version of it, right? He is the one who sacrificed himself again, and I'm being a little bit generic with it, he is the one who sacrificed himself to the evil side to be the quotation marks best. And like I already said, they should have done the Street Fighter story. And I'll say it again because I've said it every fucking video. It should have been, you could make a little fucking mini series about it, Ryu against Akuma. These two dudes going on their own path. Ryu wants to use his style of, karate. I always feel like I'm like cringing when I say it because I still want to say karate. I don't like, it's just how I say it. I should say karate. You know what I mean? But whatever, I'm just say karate like a fucking foreigner because I am, right? It just rolls off the tongue better. But, Ryu is the guy that he's devoting himself to be the strongest and he's not going to go to the dark side, right? You have the mini-series and they talk about, Ryu, he humbles his opponents. You have flashbacks to when he did the Dragon Punch against Sagat. No one had ever seen a move like that before. And it humbled Sagat. It left a scar on him that he lives his life, you know what I mean, with that scar, that he was too cocky, right? Ryu is kind of like the teacher, right? that there's always someone better than you, and you got to keep pushing yourself ahead, right? Akuma, right? You have the flashback where he kills fucking Goken, whatever, right? And he steals his beaded necklace, right? He went to the evil side, steals his beaded necklace because he thinks that's his proof of being the best, that he would even kill his brother. And now he took that, that fucking the necklace they wear. Anyway, they get to their battle, boom. And Ryu ends up beating him, right? Because he uses all these different techniques of their karate, right? He doesn't use the killing versions, but he has different versions. He has the super hurricane kick that sucks you in. He has electric hadokens, right? When Akuma gets cocky and just thinks he can block all the fireballs, he tries to block Ryu's fireballs, he gets electrocuted, blah, blah, blah. He has a different style. And then boom, you have these kind of like, it's playing back at the same time when he beats Sagat, the cocky dude, right? You have that flashback to that dragon punch that he gave him. The fucking, check yourself dragon punch, right? Then Ryu does the Shin Shoryuken versus Akuma, right? And instead of scarring Akuma, and I say this again because it's a fucking great idea, he does the Shin Shoryuken on Akuma, right? And it, boom, the impact of the dragon punch, it explodes, vibrates his whole body, and that necklace falls off. Boom, he hits him with the Shin Shoryuken, boom. Cut to black, right? Then Akuma wakes up, right? He's like, oh shit, did I get hit by that legendary dragon punch that I heard Ryu had developed? You know what I mean? Well, I've been evil, developing my evil killing techniques, right? He's grasping for his chest to see if there's any blood. Where's the scar? And then while he's feeling his chest, boom, he's like, wait, I don't feel the fucking necklace, right? And he sees the necklace is on the ground, right? And then Ryu tells him some deep shit. Again, I said it before, right? And Ryu says, and maybe he doesn't even have to say it. Maybe he has to spell it out for the audience. Maybe he doesn't. But, the idea is that Ryu's like, I didn't even have to give you a dragon punch that scarred you, right? Because that necklace that you were wearing, you've always been living with the scar of going to the dark side. You've been wearing the weight of killing your own brother on your fucking neck with that necklace, right? And now I broke that with the Shin Shoryuken, right? A dragon punch so powerful that it doesn't kill you, you know what I mean? But it fucking knocked you out, dude, right? The most powerful dragon punch ever, right? And Akuma, he's picking up that necklace, right? And he's staring at it, and he's like, shit, he's like, like I said, did you get the idea? Like, you make a series about that, dude. Because again, if you even think about the series of Street Fighter, you could even go so silly with it, right? And because be like, you have flashbacks, like I said, be a little mini series, a little small fucking movie, whatever. After Ryu does, no one had ever seen the karate style like that. And then to say after that, there's just so many people trying to emulate Ryu in that style that they've never seen before. You got other dudes becoming the Fireball Dragon Punch character, right? And you could put in little kind of silly jokes for the audience to get it, that like, oh yeah, there's a Fireball Dragon Punch character, like that's like the little lighthearted joke of the show. Like, you have a scene like that, everyone wants to do a Fireball or Dragon Punch, right? Just like Sagat didn't have a Dragon Punch originally in Street Fighter 1. Then he tried to teach himself one, but it didn't work, right? But Ryu, dude, he's the hero, right? Just like he scarred Sagat, the dude who thought he was the strongest, right? Who now has to live with that scar every day. Ryu has now scarred Akuma, so to speak. He's killed Akuma. He's killed the idea of Akuma that going to the dark side, being evil, would make him a better person, so to speak, right? With that one dragon punch, right? He's not only killed the idea of Akuma again, going to the dark side, but he's also broken down that sort of like scar that Akuma was living with his entire life. That necklace, right? Do you see what I'm like? Do you see like the parallels I'm giving? Like Sagat has a scar on his chest, the necklace of Akuma, Ryu, he could say something deep again, like, you've already been living with this scar. I've broken that, right? Leave. You're done. Ryu walks off into the distance, right? You know what I mean? Simple idea, right? And it works, right? Ryu is still a hero. Like I said, evil Ryu makes no sense because Akuma is already the evil Ryu. You don't need two evil Ryus, right? And you certainly don't need to be, or you don't need to have the poster boy for your show to always be evil, right? It's like a trope, whatever the fuck you want to call it, dude. it's not a positive influence, you know, just like I said, all this woke stuff. Oh, I changed my gender. I'm a hero now. What does that mean? You haven't done anything. Oh, but I've devoted myself to this, right? It's this like sense of entitlement, and like I said, I totally agree when I'm listening to this stuff. Like, activists shouldn't be writers. Just because you're an activist of something doesn't mean you know what the fuck you're talking about. You want to put all your propaganda in the media, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This new fandom, or your fandom, put out propaganda, all this kind of shit. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not even a good story. Because so much of this shit, like, what does this even treat? I guess it teaches acceptance, I guess. It's like, yeah, you can be evil and we can still try to be your friend, I guess. I don't know. Some of this stuff is just bullshit, dude. And again, I think about it even on the more nerdy level of, so many people talk about, or even I've had, people talk, oh, wouldn't this be a cool idea for a video game? Wouldn't this be cool? Nah, man, I don't know, dude. A lot of you motherfuckers are stupid, dude. These are bad ideas for games. Like, just because you're a nerd doesn't mean that you should make a game, right? Look at some of these ideas in video games, taking these players, like, these guys aren't that fucking smart, dude. Not that creative. And like I said, I wish I could make my own video game. If I knew how to, I would do it. But that's exactly, that's something talking about this as well. Just because I wouldn't mind making my own video game or my own revision of a Street Fighter or whatever fucking game it is, right? I'm creative enough to know that I could do that. And I think I've easily proven myself over and over. But I know that I don't have the knowledge to fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, we all have our own skills in life. And I guess it probably sucks that some people maybe think that, they're smarter, they can do it, but, it's a reality check, right? It's a bitter pill to swallow, right? I don't know. Anyway, again, just thinking about that kind of stuff. And like I said, I don't know. I've been listening to Street Fighter music while I work out sometimes lately, and it's been making me kind of feel a little bit nerdy. Like I said, I was listening to that podcast recently. So. Anywho, remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks, the end.